welcome everyone to the 4 o'clock work session for the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners on March 18th, 2014. Got a couple items on the agenda we want to talk about today. Mr. Febo, I think our first one has to do with the Warren County Downtown Economic Development Authority budget.
That's correct, Mayor. Pursuant to our relationship with Chapter 58, the agreement provides that they address us each year with their budget. This is a fairly significant year given that the state has provided its first payment of TIF funds. And tonight, as you know, we're going to be releasing some of our own TIF funds. And we asked Mrs. Coron to come today for the Chapter 58 to provide an overview of the budget and to talk about the ballpark and the exciting thing that's going on and to handle any questions. I think she has a PowerPoint as well as a spreadsheet that contains the cash flow budget. Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I'll turn it over to Mary, I guess.
Mary Coron.
Thank you. Whoops, that is out of order. You're right. If you all hold on a second, I'll try to figure this out. Or we may just be better off following the paper. Now, for some reason, the other slides have gotten all mixed up. So are you all good with following it on paper?
Sure.
If you are, that'll work better probably. The first slide is the overall just summary of the budget. What you have here is the detail of it. And of course, that wouldn't fit on the slide, so but I do want you to have it, and we want to talk a little bit about that detail because Jeff and I were discussing earlier, there's some cash flow timing issues that just simply can't show up on paper. But the next slide you're going to see, and if you'll kind of hold these out together, because we'll talk about them as we go through the summary of the budget. But the next slide is the budget for the Block 6 parking garage and Bowling Green Ballpark. One thing that has changed in there, or we're working on it changing, is in the parking garage, instead of salaries and fringes, we're hoping that'll just be a fee paid that we can share maintenance with Hitt-Sins Park Plaza, so that there won't be an employee for the authority to supervise. As you all likely know, we have never had an employee, so we're not really set up for that. We have been an all-volunteer organization. Obviously, our accountants and attorneys and other professionals have helped us a lot. But I do want to talk a little bit on the next slide with the budget, just talk through these numbers a little bit, and kind of going back in time to refresh your memory. Some of you, like Gene and Jeff, that come to meetings, and Bruce quite frequently realize this, but others of you may not remember that we have had very sketchy revenue sources in the past. The one most stable I've left off of this first slide because that's the ballpark lease revenue, and we would get $100,000 a year from Bowling Green Ballpark to help fund operating revenue. And maybe even stepping back a little bit further in history, when the TIF legislation was passed, the idea was that TIF districts would immediately go out and issue TIF bonds, and TIF bonds would help cover not only the development in the TIF district, but also cover operating expenses for Chapter 58 commissions, or in our case, the Warren County Downtown Economic Development Authority. Well, we did issue one sort of quasi-TIF bond. It was bought locally here by two banks. That bond has long since been paid off. But shortly after that, the market for TIF bonds collapsed. You all may recall what happened to the economy in 2007. And so the largest purchaser at that time in the country of TIF bonds was Oppenheimer. And Oppenheimer fell into financial disarray, as did many financial institutions across the country at that time. So the easy way and the planned way to do this certainly was just no longer in existence. So not to be daunted, as we people from Bowling Green seem to be. One thing I'm very proud of about living in this community is is we have over the years pulled together to create a great place to live, work, and play. So we continue to do that together, and we're going to talk about the future, but we certainly know today that the face of downtown Bowling Green has been changed forever for the good. And actually, this region has been changed forever. It's interesting to me, having grown up in Glasgow, to walk around in Sky Pack and at Bowling Green Ballpark and see people from all over this area having a great time in downtown Bowling Green. Anyway, as because we didn't have a way to generate revenue to operate, we had to be very careful and really prioritize what we were doing. The big new market tax credit transaction that we did early on, it hinged on us paying the interest on the leverage loan to U.S. Bank and to Community Ventures Corporation. It also hinges on us paying the management fee, which is substantial. It's a large payment quarterly, and to Community Ventures Corporation. So it would be a disaster for that transaction to unravel, because we would then be liable for the tax credit realized by U.S. Bank. So we didn't want to go there. The second highest priority in our minds was keeping our insurance premiums paid to protect all of us. Insurance on Bowling Green Ballpark, on the parking garage. We carry a little errors and omissions liability policy through the League of Cities as well. So those were kind of the big important things that we focused on all the time. And quite honestly, sometimes our attorneys and accountants had to be put aside until we could come up with money to get them paid. But we kept focusing on that money. And I want to talk a little bit while we're here about this and how it works. And if you all will look at this bigger sheet, you'll see about under the authority cash outflow, it'll say SPE transfers. In this first column, that's $75,643. Then if you'll look down to SPE, and again, to refresh your memories, single purpose entities required by the bond councils to keep the pieces of the project separated. Block 12 is SPE2, but that is a separate bond issue that was a lease revenue bond issued to fund that project. So the bond councils that write the bond documents to sell the bonds don't want to keep everything separated. But anyway, we pay interest and management fees. The interest we pay does come back to us, but there's a time gap. For example, we paid the interest in February, about the 26th of February. We got it back today. So sometimes it looks like we're going to have a lot of money coming up the next month, and it doesn't get there yet. So do please keep that in mind. The other interesting thing, will be interesting going forward, I think, is when we all receive state TIF revenue. Jeff and Jean were both in the room when I asked that question in Frankfurt the other day. Will we get the check in June? And the answer was a little vague. It was, by law, we have to get the check to you within 90 days of when we have determined you have gotten us everything we need. So that's 90 days from whenever they determine that 90 days starts. So,
Mary, is that an ongoing thing? We have to submit this data is it quarter or twice a year?
Quarterly. Yes. But it's seemingly, and you guys were there, correct me if you saw it differently, it's seemingly that they don't review it until the end of the year. I didn't see any evidence of them reviewing anything we'd sent them until, and maybe this time it was because they weren't sure we'd get to the required $200 million, and that may be the reason there. But I hope that's the reason. But this is kind of exciting to me. I know you all, it's been a frustrating experience getting budgets from us and getting numbers from us, but honestly, it's been because we didn't know for sure when we were going to be getting revenue. It was almost an exercise in futility at times. I would sit down and put numbers down, and it was almost, I almost found myself just sitting watching the checkbook most of the time because it was not easy to determine. But this time, we've got a budget that positively cash flows every month, but as you see, one is a negative cash flow of $9,000, and that's fairly easily overcome with, again, the interest coming back and forth as I just pointed out to you. This budget does include, for the first time, $100,000 that has been required, but we've just not had the money to put aside for long-term maintenance of Bowling Green Ballpark. And then $12,000 for immediate maintenance. You know, it's hard to believe, you all, the ballpark's 5 years old. And you know, 5 years of a publicly heavily used facility, even though it's a lot of concrete, things start to happen and need repair. And we, of course, have a new owner, and I'll talk a little bit about them in a minute, but they are great to work with. You will see in this budget that the ballpark lease in revenue is no longer in existence. And the reason for that is our agreement with the new owners is that to make up for not having that money that we should have been putting aside for 5 years, we won't receive lease income from them for 5 years. Now, the good news, if I'm sitting on your side of the table, is they have agreed to extend the ballpark lease for 5 more years to 25 years. And the last 5 years, the lease rate will go up to $200,000 a year. So that's good news for the city of Bowling Green and the taxpayers. Going on to the next slide, the budget has also funds available to pay the master developer fee per that agreement. Again, refreshing your memory, and I've got the exact calculation if you'd like to see it, but that fee, the master developer agreement lasts through whichever comes sooner, 12/31/14 or $300 million in investment. And I'm not sure which one will come first, and I'll show you why in just a minute. Again, I've already talked about the state TIF. Well, I haven't really. You'll see we have money left over. It looks like we've got, if you look at the summary budget, $558,325 left over. The reason I haven't, and the authority hasn't really earmarked that for anything, is we're not, number one, not sure the state TIF money will come in June. If it doesn't, then we may need that money to pay that management fee and that interest that I'm talking about, and other expenses that may come up in between now and then. If the TIF money does come in on time, then there is one loan, and this was done at the very beginning. You all, I'm not sure I was even on the authority at the time, but about $1.9 million was borrowed from PBI Bank, and it was purchasing property and relocating people off the site of Bowling Green Ballpark, businesses off that site, and things of that sort. And there's no designated payment source other than authority funds. Now, that loan has been reduced because it's been paid on all this time. Plus, one of the collateral pieces on that loan was, as you may remember, in between Harold's TV and Country Peddler was a condo that we owned. And the agreement with PBI was when we sold that condo that the proceeds would go toward the payment of that loan. So they took the proceeds, put it in an account. They paid the principal monthly. We pay the interest monthly on that loan.
So, Mary, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you all have been paying principal and interest on that PBI loan? Is it just a straight amortization for so many years, or?
It is.
And it's under the Chapter 58's name?
It is.
Okay.
Yes. And again, like I say, exciting to me that we're actually have a handle on the ballpark maintenance cost, the garage maintenance cost. I spent a lot of time on the phone the last couple of days with people at WKU in parking and transportation because they've got a lot of experience in running parking garages. And it's interesting the things that can come up and things that happen in parking garages. And so we want to keep a good cushion there in case we should need to do some extra maintenance. I do want to compliment and thank the BGPD for the help they've given us in putting that on their beat. There were some activities going on at Bowling Green Ballpark that weren't acceptable, and some of the people that were working there called us about them, and BGPD immediately got it under control. So kudos to them, as usual. They did a great job. I would like to do what Kevin asked me to do, celebrate here for just a minute. You know, I don't think, I look back 4 or 5 years ago, and we had this great vision for a wonderful improvement to downtown Bowling Green, and you know, I think all of us had our heart in our throat a little bit, wondering if the day would ever come that we'd actually see the TIF revenue or be able to hit that level, that we'd start bringing revenue back to Bowling Green that we never would have had before. You know, I think there's a little talk with some of the legislators in Frankfurt. They didn't really realize that was possible, and they didn't really think they'd be spending all this money back in Bowling Green. They thought they'd be spreading it at other projects around the state. So, but we were really happy in October to see the $3.5 million check. That check was distributed as per the revenue sharing agreement to the various entities and that are listed here with the city, the county, the Mills Family Realty, the Medical Center, and WKU. It was good to see that 1.176 and change for the authority to be able to operate. Obviously, we had amassed some pretty hefty expenses, so we were able to pay all of that, all of our expenses off. We are now don't owe anybody, and that's a great thing. And along with the check you all are going to approve tonight, we'll go through the end of fiscal year 15 and come out with a positive cash position, and that's really a good place to be. But I do think we should take a minute. I don't think people really realize the importance. We will now be getting not 3.5 million because that was for 4 years, but we will be getting checks for the next 26 years. And when you multiply 26 times even 1 million a year, that's a major piece of money to bring back to Bowling Green. And of course, it'll be used to pay down the debt on the projects, and of course we will continue maintaining Bowling Green Ballpark and the Block 6 parking garage. Of course, and I touched on this, but another benchmark year will be 2017, and I hesitate almost to talk about the new market tax credit transaction because somebody said to me, that sounds too good to be true. And it does. And that's why we don't talk about it a lot. But the only trip we've ever sent anybody on, and they had to pay for it out of their own pockets, but our accountant and our attorney went to a new market tax credit conference in Washington to learn about the intricacies of those transactions. Jerry Shelton simply thought it was too good to be true. But we're very closely approaching the day when the debt is forgiven, the interest payments stop, and the management fee stops. So we realized about $19 million to the positive through that transaction for the city of Bowling Green. So it is a day to, it is a time to celebrate. You know, it's funny, you all have things happen in your life, and you go, my goodness. All of us have driven through downtowns that are just dead, all boarded up, and empty stores and so on. Well, we went to a football game in Birmingham, and we went to Legends Field, and I don't know whether you all have ever seen where Legends Field is, but we were driving through there, and Caroline goes, Grandmommy, do people live in there? There's no windows or doors. And I said, yes, honey, they do. And we were talking about how that happened. And they tried very hard to do a redevelopment of downtown Birmingham, but enough of the city voted against it that they never accomplished it. And it's horrible. It looks like a war zone. And so, you know, I just, when I drove over here tonight, I just am, I don't know, I don't think we in Bowling Green would ever have let that happen to our community. But wow, am I happy that when I drive from my house on Main Street to City Hall, it's hustle, bustle, storefronts are all filled. It's a great place to be. And we will continue that. So in front of you, the next slide is the capital investment report. And this is up to date as of today. And as you can see, we've completed $204.5 million in construction. We have another 2.5 or more million under construction to bring the total today at over $257 million. So a lot of these things, the TIF district really directly didn't fund or didn't bring any advantage to being in the TIF district to the project. But as the marketing study that was done some years ago said, they said, you know, clearly if we could get a sports venue and an entertainment venue in downtown, then the other things would start to follow. And the interesting thing to me now, because, you know, residential doesn't produce TIF revenue, so we've not invested in getting residential. But other private developers are now starting to do that. The first one being Alan Schubert at Bowling Green Junior High School renovation, and we're going to talk about others in a minute. But a lot of these accomplishments are just astounding to me, and I think as we see the next set of construction projects go up, again, I don't know for sure, Kevin, what the future brings. I know there are 320 acres in the TIF district, and I would like to see all 320 of them look as fabulous as the ones that we have constructed today. Under construction, and if you'll kind of follow that slide as we go through the pictures, the first slide is the Block 6 mixed use, which you all now know is HitSense Park Plaza. Obviously the wrap is now occupied by HitSense and Connected Nations. And the 5 restaurants on the first floor will open in the next few weeks. They evidently have phenomenal effort going on in that building to get 5 restaurants opened at once. I can't quite imagine doing that, but it's quite an effort, and I think will flow very nicely with Bowling Green Ballpark.
How's the leasing of the rest of that building coming?
I'm not sure, Bruce. I know there's some negotiation going on right now, but I'm not sure how that's coming so far. But be glad to find out for you and let you know when I do know. The next slide is the one I'm really excited about. I can't tell you how many hotel developer tours that Donald Smith and I conducted over a period of about 4 years. It got to be kind of a joke between the two of us that our life had become tour guides for hotel developers. So to have Doug Artuzio and their group and the Hyatt Place Hotel in Bowling Green, I think is going to be fantastic. It's to open in late 2014. I don't know, have you all ever stayed in one of these? They're a great concept. I've stayed in one in Louisville, and they're just a fantastic concept that I think will be a just huge addition to downtown Bowling Green. I remember many years ago standing in the lobby of the then vacant Helm Hotel watching the Christmas parade, and somebody said, "We'll never ever have another hotel downtown again." Well, they're wrong. We're going to have one, and not only are we going to have one, but we're going to have a fantastic hotel. The next slide is the mixed-use development being constructed on Block 12. It again is pretty fantastic with 13,000 square feet of commercial development, 328 beds expected to open in the spring of 2015, and in phase 2, 240 additional beds. Thank you, Tony. That's great. So That's right. That's just, I get north and south backwards in this town every time I talk about it. I don't know why I think up is north and down is south, but it's the other way around. But anyway, that's right across from the Alumni Center and the hotel. And again, the more people, be it students or whomever, living and working downtown, the more likely other businesses that we would all love to see come to downtown Bowling Green are more likely to do that. Block 16, there's not a slide for that, but that is the Student Life Foundation will do 220 units that are expected to open this fall, or in the fall of 2014, this coming fall. And that's on Kentucky Street. And I'm sure you all have seen the work that's going on there. And then last but certainly not least, a very exciting thing that has happened to us. I thought the world of Art Solomon. He was a great person to work with, enjoyed Brad Taylor as GM of the Hot Rods. Just when I thought it couldn't get any better, it got better. Jerry and Stuart Katzoff have bought the Hot Rods from Art and his group. They want to take it up 10 notches. You can see the before picture, the one we're all familiar with. Well, that's what it used to look like, but it's going to look like this. They sent these pictures to us. This is probably what caused the lack of inability to transmit this proposal to you all, because these pictures are pretty detailed and probably take up a whole lot of computer space, would be my guess. But working on that new entrance, and then they are restaurateurs by profession, own restaurants all over the country, well, all over the world, literally. They own a restaurant in Dubai, Singapore, and so on. So they are determined to have the very best food ever at Bowling Green Ballpark. So there'll be all new concessions, lots of different, from barbecue to burgers to Mexican to, you'll have lots of choices. A few more healthy choices than we've had in the past. They were astounded that there was a deep fat fryer in every single concession stand. So they want to see something better there. So excited about that. And then, last but not least, they really want, this is the new playground at Bowling Green Ballpark. They said, 2 or 3 bouncies just don't quite get it. We need a really great area for children. They really believe that the ballpark is an entertainment event, and it should be a place where, whether you like baseball or you don't like baseball, you can go and take your family and have a great time and have great food. So they have committed to do a lot of this on their own. Which we're lucky to have people that have the resources to do this. So I think we have a great future ahead. 5 years out is a time when you probably would expect to really need to revitalize something. We just had no idea we would have such spectacular resources to do that revitalization with. So you're going to see more and more of them. I know some of you met them. They were here the other day, had a reception at Bowling Green Ballpark. They've been delightful to work with. When I said I need a few pictures, I had them in 2 minutes. So I think you're going to find them very responsive to us and to this community. They're also reiterating that they really want to bring a lot to this community, and I think you all have already seen advertised a concert at Bowling Green Ballpark that had in the past been talked about but never came to fruition. So I'm very excited that those types of things are happening. I know I've thrown a lot at you all very quickly. Do you have any questions?
Oh, don't say that. Questions from anybody?
Mary, I noticed the marketing expense that's set aside in the budget. In the scope of things, it's only $38,000. But is there a specific plan? Somebody you're going after there? That's a 3 month window. It looks like that you're doing something specific.
Yeah, that's a great question, Rick, and I should have touched on that. That money has come for the last 3 years from BGMU and TVA. And we created a marketing plan before they gave us the first money 3 years ago. And they review that plan at the end of each year to determine, what we've accomplished before they give us the money the next year. Henrietta Pepper with the Pepper Group. Henrietta is a brand communication and marketing specialist and grew up here in Bowling Green. Henrietta created our strategic plan. We're working right now on, matter of fact, the website ought to be up. I hope you'll be able to see it shortly. The City Center website, the logo was announced quite some time ago. But we're also working with Vicki Fitch to have hopefully a coordinated signage wayfinding system. When you live in a place, you get used to things, and it's funny when somebody comes in from outside, like Jerry Katzoff, he said, if you didn't know where Bowling Green Ballpark is, you couldn't find it. And I thought, wow, he's kind of right. So we're working, I know Vicki's working with the state. There are lots of new things going on with the state and signage and how it has to be done, and of course it's very expensive. So, but our hope is at some point to have from the interstate into downtown Bowling Green and then around downtown, not just the TIF district, but wayfinding that helps people find the ballpark, restaurants, maybe even City Hall, who knows, wherever they need to be. So that's hopefully as the website gets up and running, one of the proposals, and Henrietta has met with a lot of different businesses around town over the years, the last 3 years, and hopefully we'll again have a coordinated marketing effort where it can be Morris Jeweler at City Center. It can be any business, BGMU at City Center. We want that to become a way of thinking. And I know I've been really pleased with Gary Ransdell. Every time he mentions Alumni Square, he says Alumni Square at City Center. So having that identity and where people can know where they need to, how they need to get to where they want to be, and what City Center is, what's there, what's in it is important.
It's a branding effort. Yeah.
It is a branding effort. It is. Okay. And Rick, a little background, because I know you have background in that. They did focus groups and surveys and a lot of research before they came up with that. I mean, that name is not particularly creative in my view. I mean, but they did a lot of research, and that name resonated with people. And what we don't want to do is try to isolate the TIF district from the rest of downtown. I mean, we want it to, my hope is the average person won't know where one stops and the other starts. We believed all along, and I think we've seen that with Mellow Mushroom and other things that have gone up in downtown, that the TIF district, there would be a ripple effect from it. And there would be a lot of people come into the downtown area and businesses because of it that really are not in the TIF district at all.
Anybody else have a question up here for yes, ma'am?
On this list, Mary, the Warren County, your cash inflow and outflow,
Mm-hmm.
down the bottom where it says parking services and utility, one's $19,000. What is that for?
The parking services were Premier Parking. That you remember they manned all the parking lots, Melinda. They had somebody there collecting money before the ball games and when there were events downtown, and of course they had to be paid. The attendants and so on had to be paid for that.
Okay.
And then the utilities that's the parking garage.
For the utilities for the garage,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
That we paid. We had to reimburse. Once we took possession, we had to reimburse Alliance for the months that the parking garage had been ours, but they had continued to pay the bill.
So utilities are only the parking garage there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mr. Febo?
Yeah. Mary, where is the city's revenue under the inflow, cash inflow? The money we give to Chapter 58?
It's not here yet because we don't know how much it is. When we do, we'll put it in there.
The city's money, the 80/20 we give you.
Right.
For the last 3 years or
Is it
so?
not in that
Well,
$1,000,005 number?
This is from 2014. This is starting in July of 2014 through June of 15. So,
Do you expect to get money from us? I'm sure you do, right?
yeah.
So this 1,572,585 projection.
that's- yes.
That's a projection for FY15.
Yes. City-
That's state and city money,
Combined.
and that's Chapter
Combined.
58 and SBE money. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that the net figure that the authority will keep after doing their distributions to everybody else?
Yeah, that would be what's the authority's
After you pay Western, after you pay,
medical center and everybody, yeah. County, mills,
I'm sorry, that was the net figure, did you say?
yes.
yeah.
More of a statement than a question, but maybe it is a question for you. The macro overview of the budget is that you have more money than you have expenses, and that's a good thing.
I think so. It's really a good feeling.
Okay.
It's a new
All right.
feeling, but a good
Okay.
one.
Is there new plans for the coming year? Goals, desires, projects that we should celebrate in? Or-
Well, other than what I've shown you, Kevin, I think all of us, there are things we'd like to see downtown. We'd like to see, you know, a nice grocery store downtown. We'd like to see a nice drugstore downtown.
Okay.
The Dollar General store turned out to be great. I mean, it's probably the best looking Dollar General store in the country. But
Yes, it's beautiful.
it really is. So there's just a lot more services we'd like to see downtown, and you know, like I say, I'll be happy when all 320 acres are developed, and obviously everything every business that's added generates more TIF revenue, so it's good for all of us when that happens. But I do think we need to remember that for businesses to thrive downtown, there do need to be people living downtown. And I put my money where my mouth was and moved downtown. So I hope to see more people do that, and that way we won't have to do anything to get the businesses there. They'll come where the people are.
Can I piggyback on that question just
You
for a
can,
second?
then I'll piggyback on you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
So with this, I guess you'd call it a currently temporary surplus in a way, as you get to
Unappropriated money.
unappropriated money, thank
Okay.
you. As we get closer to the 2017, where we drop off the management fees for the New York market tax credits, as we close down the master developer fees with that deadline approaching, do you all foresee even a better income statement, I guess you'd say, once you get out past 2017, once you get past paying off the master developer, and what would your plans be if your TIF revenues continue to grow yet your expenses stay flat or even decline? What would be the plans for that difference? Have you thought about that or talked about that?
We haven't a lot yet. No, I mean, to be honest, Jeff, it's been quite a challenge to get to where we are today, and I think the projects that you've seen us talk about going up now, you know, the group from Missouri, they found us. They look for college towns where that's been their success in the past, that were vibrant college towns with lots going on. So the WKU Sky Pack Ballpark trio certainly has brought them to town. So I guess what I'm saying a little bit is a lot of what we aspire to do will have to do with the interest that we find. I mean, honestly, the question Rick asked, it may be 2017 before we can have enough money to do, because I had no idea what signage cost. My goodness, it's incredible. Another thing that I think maybe Melissa and I talked about a little bit, and and certainly Doug and Kevin are here and they can chime in, but you know, as we grow in the TIF district, one of the challenges will be the traffic and traffic patterns. And I know you all have done studies and we'd like to work with you. That might be, you know, some of that money may need to be used to reroute, because again, I had no idea what it costs to make a one-way street a two-way street, but it's a pretty hefty chunk of change. So, you know, there are things like that, but no question, we're at a point in time where we need to sit down as an authority and realize, okay, we're kind of pinching ourselves that we've reached the good life here with this positive budget and have in our sights what you just described, Jeff. But they haven't been in our sights very long. But we need to, I guess, quit pinching ourselves and think forward.
To tag team off of Jeff, you mentioned it earlier that one of the challenges, if not bane, is the fact that you have no staff.
Yes.
Okay. Is this maybe the time to start thinking about that?
Yes, and Henrietta has already asked about having someone on the ground here in marketing, which I think could be done sooner rather than later, possibly. Like say, depending on the timing of state TIF revenue and when we get it, I think that would be fantastic. But trust me, there are no two people more than Doug Gorman and myself that would like to have a paid staff person. And I feel certain that had we had somebody, you know, I'm kind of a spoiled, rotten brat, Kevin. I had an administrative assistant for most of my life. Mm-hmm. So when I try to put together a PowerPoint presentation and ship it off to the city, and it comes back to me, I bet if we had somebody a little more astute at that than me, it wouldn't have happened that way.
It's hard, you know, with volunteers only, as you know. It's difficult.
Yes, and plus this is a hard. You know, my husband every now and then asks me, "How long are you going to do that?" And the hard part is the learning curve in this project is so incredibly steep that it would be great if we could bring a staff person on and they could become very grounded in the project before the board ever turned over. But at some point, you know, we are volunteer board members.
It just seemed like maybe this was the time to start that discussion. I know, being one of the people who was with you 5 years ago, that was talked about then.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's been the biggest challenge.
Have I left anything out, guys?
I got a couple of questions real quick too, if I can. Other than new market tax credits, is the PBI loan the only debt outstanding, or you still have the alumni that have been paid off?
PBI is.
I don't know.
No,
We owe it, okay. Because I didn't see it on here. So
yeah, I'm opening this because I've got our balance sheet in here. The PBI loan is the only loan that there's not a designated source of revenue to pay it off, Gene. You know, the revenue sharing agreement, block by block, says this TIF revenue goes to pay this. This TIF revenue goes to pay this. But the PBI loan is the only one where there is no designated TIF revenue to pay it.
okay. And then on the, a couple of quick other questions too. On the parking revenues, is it possible to break out your ground parking revenues from the garage? Of course, I'm not sure you got anything from the garage much yet, but. Is it possible to break out your parking revenues from the garage versus revenues from your ground parking? Because I know y'all made a lot of income on your parking lot revenues for ball games, and because I asked that because the interlocal says that the city gets net income from the garage. I don't think there's going to be net income, but it's kind of hard to figure out what the revenue is. I see the expenses.
Actually, I mean, we can do it, but the reports that we get shows each parking lot.
You got to introduce yourself.
Dr. Swan. The revenue that the reports that we do get, each event does show which parking lots we have open, because we do have contractual agreements with several parking lots depending on the event. It's how we staff those. We try to do, it's kind of like Walmart. You're only going to have enough lanes open to frustrate people. No, I'm just kidding. But we do have those lots, but when we get that report back, it does show, you know, for instance, BGMU was this many tickets, the car, so we could get that if we needed to. I mean, we have that report. I get an Excel email to me on each event. So if you had to have it broken down, we can get our operator to do that, to show you by year how many people parked at each lot. We definitely could do that.
Well, it looks like clearly the expenses are going to exceed probably the income, but it would be nice to see that the garage generated this much income and this much expenses to,
Okay.
just to show it to commission. And I guess only the last thing I think I have, if I can figure out, hold on a second, we talked about the baseball stadium, and maybe this will be a Kevin question, but I assume y'all are still negotiating that assignment and.
We are. They have the assignment. We have everything signed on that, but they have agreed. You know, we had a 20-year lease originally, so they're 5 years into it. There's 15 years left, and as Mary pointed out, they've agreed to extend it 5 more years, so it's now 24 years on it. Last 5 years being $200,000 per year. So they've doubled the rent for the last 5 years, and we do have all that. Cat's office have signed off, and
They'll need to come here for cook
I
food.
would say also, Gene, that there's a few other things that I didn't even report on at the last board meeting that were just, I think, cleaned up. You want me to come up here?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. I think obviously you've heard about the larger changes in the lease and the economics. There are a variety of just little, I think, tweaks, nitpicks, things that I think need to be fixed. Everybody, and I'll bring them back to the authority, you know, for everybody to approve. But there are a few other little things we need to clean up that just don't make any sense. None of us really know what they mean at this point. So,
I mean, I'm sure the board realizes it, but you know, those changes, the final document needs to come here for approval
yes,
as well.
I would think we would bring it one time, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
On your master developer fees, I know you've got this planned expenditure for FY15. Do we know to what point you all have paid for as far as development goes? I know I was trying to find that we're showing completed of, how much was it? I lost it. Do we know kind of where we're at with them, or can you even say, or?
Yeah, Joyce has calculated that as they've gone along. You know, we get the report of the investment, Jeff, and then the fee is calculated via, again, here's the way the computation is arrived at. And I'd say we've got right now, we owe them approximately, and we won't know until, you know, we have the final report, but we owe them approximately another $525,000.
I know it's a moving target, so.
It is.
But you think after this payment here, it'd be another 525?
I do.
Okay.
For the previous 4 years?
Well, yes, and going forward, some of the projects that are on the table
Okay,
now.
I'm sorry.
Pay them up to the $200 million in development.
I got you.
Well, actually, they're paid up to $300 million.
Yeah, whatever it.
According to the
where we're at.
agreement.
257.
Yeah, and it goes from 1% to 1.5%. The way this, and Doug and Gene Cherry negotiated this agreement, so he's probably can be more specific than I am, but the idea here was to incent them on the back end, to incent them to get to the $200 million. So lesser money paid up front, more money paid on the back end. And obviously that worked because as we talked about earlier, we're in excess of $257 million now under construction or completed. So, and a lot of private development. I think that's one thing that is pretty exciting to me, that the public projects are wonderful, and I know we all enjoy them, but it's great to see the private money that's flowing into this community.
Anyone else have any more questions? Get everything squared away we need?
I think so.
All right. Thank you. It was a great presentation. We
Well,
appreciate
thank-
the information. Thank you
thank
for
you
getting
all
it
for having us.
together in a format that we can follow and providing us. Thank you so much.
Glad to do it.
have another item on our work session talking about design services for the Hennessy Way project.
I can preamble this, Mayor, if it'd be all right. Our signature project for the coming year for roads is Hennessy Way. As we talked about at retreat, that has gone through a variety of mutations, and we're here today to give you an update, and we hope to make significant progress by the end of today on this project. So I thought it'd be helpful if Jeff could lay out the new configuration of the project and where we are, and answer most of your questions if possible.
Katie, I'm up and going. Appreciate your time. Again, as Mr. DeFebo said, I'm here to update you on the Hennessy Way project, and some of this is going to be rehashed of stuff we've already talked about, but in an effort just to bring everybody up together on the same page. It's our objective tonight. First off, the need for the Hennessy project caused primarily due to congestion in the area, and that was hampered with some poor access management issues, making that further hampering that congestion. Proximity to signals and items such as that, where intersections come in, being the prime example of that. Original plan we presented October 15th in a working session. And I'll go through some of these descriptions. I'll show the maps after the fact. This original plan was to realign the existing Hennessy Way, the portion in front of McDonald's to the south, intersecting with Corvette Way further from the intersection of Corvette Way and Kentucky 446. Since that time, another alternate had been presented to us. We showed that to you in the retreat held in January, and that was an option to put a signal out on Kentucky 446, the main road out to the side, and allowing Hennessy to directly access that in the vicinity of the Frugal Loom. That would benefit several businesses along the Hennessy Way, and I think Melissa had talked to some representatives with McDonald's, and they viewed that as a plus, more ability to get in and get out of their business. Funding, originally the state had $500,000 in the budget. So far there's been approval for $100,000 of this. This is the existing condition as it sits today. Hennessy is this portion right here. The original alternate, as I talked about, was to leave part of the road in, do some minor improvements at the old intersection, bring the road to the south, tie in. The objective here with the signalized intersection, this would provide more queuing room and would increase the operations and capacity of the project. So that was the original concept. I'll call that Hennessy 1, this Hennessy alternate 1A. This is where it's proposed that a signal would go in here and direct access from Hennessy Way onto that. That would, again, the existing signal would be there, and that would allow that to take place. Now a separate enhancement that would work with either of those alternate is one with Parker Avenue. Parker Avenue is, well, let me go back one. Hennessy comes here, makes this turn. Parker Avenue picks up here and comes out to Porter Pike. And I'll zoom in on that in a little bit. This other enhancement would involve realigning Parker, moving it to the east, further away from the intersection of Porter Pike and 31W, and it would line up with River Place Avenue, which is the road that you would go to Dollar General, and I'll show you a map on status of that, we're currently working with the owner and developer in some negotiations and discussions with them. This, and I'll 31W. This is the railroad underpass over here. Interstate's out this way. This is the Dollar General off Porter Pike, in River Place Avenue. This alternate would look at realigning that portion further from this intersection. We did some we looked at accidents that occurred there, and we've had about 5 per year over the past 2 years. We've had 5 per year. The previous year we had 3. So with either the other thing that we would still need to do with this project, and again, I present this as another alternate. I think the 2 projects could stand separate. There is some benefit of this from a capacity and safety standpoint. And the other item that we would need to do would be doing some intersection improvements at the current Hennessy Way and Corvette Avenue, and that would be some curbing around the corner to better define that intersection and to better control that intersection. That would be at the corner with the Travelstead liquor store. So just the idea of bring you up to date, make sure everybody's on the same page, and any questions you have, I'd be glad to entertain them.
Questions, comments? Appreciate you working on this. I know there's a lot of activity going on, not only the Corvette Museum, but the Motorsports Park and some additional development on Hennessy Way. So, well,
and we're seeing some growth in this area. So, and with Fruit of the Loom coming in, and some other businesses and some other activities, the Corvette track being one, there'll be more activity in this area.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Anything?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna make sure everybody's good.
All right.
We'll chat later.
That's the last item then we have on the work session. Unless anybody has a policy initiative they want to throw out, as everybody puts their microphone down. So we'll return at 7 o'clock for a regular session, and thank you for tuning in.